One NHRA winner in the 70s was hated because his car exposed a loophole no one saw coming.
October 14, 1978, 3:26 p.m., Fairmont dragstrip. A plain Jane, baby blue 1978 Ford Fairmont four-door, the car motor trend had literally called the ugliest thing Ford ever built, rolls to the line on skinny bias-ply tires looking like it just came from church. Across the lane sits Warren Johnson's $250,000, 500 Ci, flip-top, chrome moly Monza that had won the last 3 national events and was already on the cover of every magazine as the future of pro stock. 45,000 people are laughing until the tree drops. 7.94 at 179 miles per hour. The Monza is left choking on smoke, and the entire pro stock field realizes in one heartbreaking second that their careers just got murdered by a station wagon-shaped family car driven by a quiet Indiana engine builder named Bob Glidden. This is the true story of the 1978 Ford Fairmont Pro Stock. The car competitors screamed was physically impossible. The car NHRA tried to outlaw 4 separate times while competitors filed official protests with tears in their eyes. The car that forced the sanctioning body to rewrite the entire rulebook because one man and one ugly blue box kept winning everything. They called it unfair. They called it cheating. They begged NHRA to park it forever. Bob Glidden just called it Tuesday. Keep watching. Because what this Fairmont did over the next 10 years didn't just dominate pro stock. It broke hearts, ended dynasties, and made grown men quit the sport they loved. And 45 years later some of them still can't say Fairmont without their voice cracking. 1978, when Ford accidentally built the perfect weapon. April 1978, Dearborn, Michigan. While GM and Chrysler are pouring millions into sleek, low-slung, wind-tunnel-tested Firebirds and Arrows that look like spaceships, Ford's racing department is panicking because their only new pro stock body is the boxy, tall-roof, four-door 1978 Fairmont Futura. The same car motor trend had just voted ugliest design of the decade. And nobody wants to touch it until Bob Glidden walks into the trailer at the Winter Nationals, stares at the baby blue shell, and calmly says the words that would haunt every competitor for the next 10 years. Give me that one. The uglier it is, the less they'll expect it to kill them. Instead of crying about the terrible aerodynamics, Glidden discovers the tall roof and blunt nose actually create a massive low-pressure bubble behind the car that sucks it down the track like a vacuum cleaner. Stuffs a Cleveland-based 500-plus cubic inch mountain motor under completely stock sheet metal, keeps the factory wheelbase, factory roof height, factory windshield angle, and factory doors that actually open, then paints it plain baby blue with simple white lettering because flashy cars lose focus and ugly cars get laughed at right until the taillights disappear at 179 miles per hour. First official race, October 14, 1978, Fairmont dragstrip. Glidden qualifies number 1 with a jaw-dropping 7.94, wins the event running identical 7.94 to 7.96 every round, and watches the entire pro stock field file the first of what would become dozens of protests while NHRA tech officials tear the car apart for 6 straight hours and find absolutely nothing illegal. Just Bob standing there with his quiet smile while Warren Johnson turns to his crew and says the sentence every competitor would repeat for the next decade. We just got our asses handed to us by a station wagon, and I think we're all going to be sick. That night the bloodbath officially began, and the baby blue Fairmont was only warming up. First race, first blood. The day pro stock broke. October 14, 1978, Fairmont dragstrip, final round, 6:42 p.m. The baby blue Fairmont sits on the line against Bill Grumpy Jenkins' stunning red, white, and blue Monza. The defending world champion running 7.80s on a 500 Ci big block and the heavy favorite. 45,000 fans are already laughing at the grocery getter. When the tree drops and Bob Glidden cuts a perfect .437 light, the Fairmont explodes forward like it's been shot out of a cannon. The front wheels lift 4 inches. The Cleveland mountain motor screams through completely stock mufflers, and 7.94 seconds later at 179.14 miles per hour the Monza is staring at taillights while the scoreboard flashes, win, Glidden, for the first time in the ugliest car anyone has ever seen. The grandstands fall dead silent, then erupt into pure chaos as grown men in the pits start throwing clipboards, kicking toolboxes, and screaming at officials because the car that just humiliated the entire factory-backed field still has working door handles, a factory dashboard, and Bob's wife Judy riding shotgun in the tow vehicle like they're coming home from church. NHRA tech swarms the lane, tears the Fairmont down to the frame rails for 8 straight hours under floodlights while Bob sits calmly on a cooler eating a sandwich, and when the head tech finally walks over pale-faced and announces, "It's 100% legal," Warren Johnson is heard yelling across the pits, "That thing is physically impossible." As the first wave of official protests, 23 in one weekend, gets filed before the trophy ceremony even starts. That single Sunday night in California didn't just hand Bob Glidden his first win in the Fairmont. It broke pro stock spirit, ended the era of pretty cars automatically winning, and started a 10-year reign of terror that would force NHRA to rewrite the rules 4 separate times while competitors cried themselves to sleep knowing tomorrow they had to race the baby blue box that simply refused to lose. The win streak that made grown men cry. 1979 season opener, February 18th, Gainesville, Bob Glidden rolls the same baby blue Fairmont to the line for the first time as defending event champion, and the entire pro stock field is already shaking. Warren Johnson has a brand new Monza with 50 more horsepower, Lee Shepard debuts a sleek Camaro, Rear Morrison brings a $300,000 big block Firebird, and every single one of them watches in horror as Glidden qualifies number 1 with a 7.89, then runs 7.89 to 7.92 on every single pass like a photocopier. Cutting .42, .44 lights while the Cleveland motor never lifts, never smokes a tire, never misses a shift, and by Sunday final the scoreboard shows Glidden with his second straight national event win while grown men who spent their life savings building prettier cars stand in the shutdown area with tears streaming down their faces because the ugly Fairmont just beat them again without even breathing hard. From Gainesville to Indy to Pomona the pattern repeats. Glidden wins 7 of the 8 national events, sets both ends of the national record 3 separate times, and finishes the year with an 85% win rate that forces NHRA to hold emergency meetings because sponsors are threatening to pull out of pro stock entirely if that damn station wagon isn't stopped. By the end of 1979, the nickname, the Fairmont that destroyed pro stock, is spray-painted on trailer walls. Competitors refuse to park next to it in the pits, and one famous photo from the U.S. Nationals shows Bill Jenkins kicking his toolbox so hard he breaks his foot after losing in the semifinals while Bob calmly tows the Fairmont back with Judy driving the family van like they're going grocery shopping. The win streak wasn't racing anymore. It was public execution, and every trophy Bob lifted in that baby blue box carved another piece out of the hearts of the men who swore they'd never lose to a 4-door family car. It's not legal. The protest that backfired spectacularly. March 1980, NHRA Winter Nationals, Pomona, 9:47 a.m. Before the Fairmont even fires for the first time that year, Warren Johnson, Lee Shepard, Bill Jenkins, and 7 other top pro stock teams march into the tech building carrying a 42-page handwritten protest claiming the baby blue car is aerodynamically impossible, structurally illegal, and must be hiding 600 cubic inches, demanding NHRA strip it to the frame right there in front of 60,000 fans. Officials give in, order the full teardown on the starting line while the crowd holds its breath, and for 9 straight hours under California's sun every single part comes off. Hood, fenders, doors, interior, engine, transmission, rear end, until the Fairmont is nothing but a bare chassis on jack stands and Bob Glidden stands calmly drinking coffee while the head tech director walks over pale-faced holding the measuring tape and announces on the public address system, "Everything is 100% legal, 358 cubic inches, stock wheelbase. Stock body lines, 0 violations," and the grandstands explode into the loudest cheer in Pomona history while the protesting drivers stand speechless as their own protest just proved to the entire world that Glidden is simply smarter, faster, and meaner than all of them combined. Over the next 3 seasons the same scene repeats at Indy, Gainesville, and Columbus. Official protests, emergency teardowns, cubic inch checks, wind tunnel accusations, and every single time NHRA is forced to stamp "legal" on the car while competitors walk away looking like they just watched their bank accounts burn. By 1982 the protest folder at NHRA headquarters is 3 inches thick, every page stamped "denied." And the baby blue Fairmont has become the most inspected, most measured, most hated, and still most unbeatable car in the sport's history, teaching every racer the hardest lesson of their lives. Sometimes the rules don't stop genius. They just make it look easier. NHRA's emergency rule changes. That still didn't work. June 1982, NHRA headquarters, emergency closed-door meeting, with Bob Glidden and the baby blue Fairmont on pace for a 3rd straight perfect season and sponsor money fleeing pro stock like rats off a sinking ship. Officials slam through the first of 4 desperate rule changes specifically designed to kill the Fairmont. They impose a 2,350-pound minimum weight, hoping to slow the Lightford. Ban the tall, stock-appearing roofline, mandate a 110-inch maximum wheelbase, and cap the Cleveland based mountain motors at 360 cubic inches effective immediately, announcing it on the public address system at the Summer Nationals while 48,000 fans boo so loud the grandstands shake. Bob Glidden hears the new rules, walks silently back to the pits, tells his crew, "Give me 2 weeks." And 14 days later shows up at Le Grand National Molson in Canada with the exact same Fairmont, now wearing a slightly shorter nose, 200 pounds of ballast bolted in the trunk, and a destroked 358 CI Cleveland. That somehow makes even more power than before. He qualifies number 1 with a 7.71, wins the event running 7.69 to 7.72 like the rule change was a suggestion, then repeats the massacre at the next 5 races while competitors watch in absolute horror as every single Glidden killer rule NHRA just wrote turns into free advertising for how unstoppable the ugly blue box really is. By the end of 1983, NHRA has changed the pro stock rulebook 4 separate times: weight breaks, body templates, engine limits, spoiler rules, all publicly admitted in private memos to be the Glidden rules, and the Fairmont is still winning 80% of the rounds it enters, proving once and for all that when you're smarter than the rule makers, the only thing a new rule does is give you a new way to embarrass them. July 1985, Englishtown Summer Nationals, 1:14 p.m., Bob Glidden unveils the final evolution of the hated blue terror, the infamous Aero Fairmont, a baby blue 1978 body now stretched, slammed, and razor-nosed until it looks like a blue dart shot out of Ford's worst nightmare. The roof has been chopped 2 inches, the windshield laid back 5 degrees, the front fenders narrowed and flared, the rear spoiler grown into a full-width wing, every single change done with a tape measure and a hacksaw. In Bob's own Indiana garage, because NHRA's new, stock-appearing body templates still can't stop a man who understands airflow better than the sanctioning body itself. First pass, 7.48 at 187.63 miles per hour, quickest pro stock run in history, and the entire field watches in stunned silence as the ugliest car ever built suddenly becomes the most aerodynamic weapon on the planet. Competitors scream, "Witchcraft," because no factory 4-door was ever supposed to cut the wind like that. NHRA officials scramble with templates and plumbobs for 3 hours and finally have to admit every modification is within the new rules they wrote specifically to kill Glidden, and by Sunday night the Aero Fairmont has won the event, reset both ends of the national record twice, and turned the pro stock class into a one-man slaughterhouse while grown men who spent $500,000 on wind tunnel bodies stand in the pits crying because the quiet guy from Indiana just beat them with a 10-year-old grocery getter and a Cleveland motor he built on his kitchen table. From 1985 to 1989, the Aero Fairmont becomes the most feared silhouette on any quarter mile, winning 4 straight championships and 49 national events while the rest of the field watches their dreams die at 187 miles per hour behind a car that started life as the butt of every automotive joke in America. 1986 to 1989. 4 straight championships, zero mercy. February 1986, Pomona Winter Nationals. The green light for the darkest 4-year reign in pro stock history. Bob Glidden and the Aero Fairmont show up with the same baby blue paint now scarred with 200 round wind stickers and a Cleveland that has grown to the absolute maximum allowed 360 cubic inches yet somehow still makes 1,350 horsepower on engine alone. The season starts with a 7.42 at 189.47 miles per hour, low ET of the entire meet, and never slows down. Glidden wins the first 5 national events in a row, then 8 of 10, then clinches the 1986 championship with 3 races still left while Warren Johnson, now driving GM's best stuff, finishes second in points by a humiliating 2,400-point margin, the largest gap in NHRA history, and is caught on national television throwing his helmet at the trailer because racing Glidden is like racing God with a bad attitude. The pattern repeats like a nightmare. 1,987, wins 9 of 13 events, another record margin, 1988, 10 wins, 42 of 48 round wins, clinches at the Summer Nationals while eating a sandwich in the pits, 1989, 9 wins again, 4 straight titles, 85 total pro stock victories lifetime. And every single year the other drivers watch their million-dollar programs get dismantled by a quiet man in a 10-year-old Fairmont who never raises his voice, never does burnouts for the crowd, never celebrates harder than a simple handshake with his crew, while the scoreboard keeps flashing, win, Glidden, so often that announcers literally run out of ways to say, he did it again. By the end of 1989, Bob Glidden has 4 consecutive championships, a 74% career win percentage, and the entire pro stock field broken, beaten, and begging NHRA for mercy that will never come, because the baby blue arrow Fairmont didn't just win races, it ended dynasties, crushed dreams, and turned the most competitive class in drag racing into the Bob Glidden Retirement Tour. The Glidden Lean and the day pro stock went 7 seconds. July 14, 1987, 3:37 p.m., Bandimere Speedway, Denver, 5,800 feet above sea level where thin air usually robs 100 horsepower from every engine. Bob Glidden stages the Aero Fairmont against Darrell Alderman's brand new Dodge Daytona running the latest factory Hemi. The crowd is already buzzing because nobody has ever broken 7.50 at this track. The tree drops, and the baby blue box launches so hard the left front wheel lifts 8 inches while the entire car leans dramatically to the right. The famous Glidden Lean, caused by perfectly calculated weight transfer and suspension tuning. The Cleveland screams through the mile-high air, and 7.492 seconds later at 185.46 miles per hour the clocks freeze and the mountain literally shakes as 28,000 people jump to their feet screaming because Bob Glidden just became the first pro stock driver in history to run a 7-second pass at altitude, a feat engineers swore was physically impossible. The very next month at the U.S. Nationals he does it again on a perfect Indiana night, 7.412 at 187.91 miles per hour, the first official sub 7.50 in pro stock history, and the Glidden Lean becomes the most copied, most hated, most feared body language in drag racing as every team spends the next decade trying to make their cars lean like Bob's while he quietly resets both ends of the national record 23 times in 4 years. Competitors start calling the Fairmont the Blue Devil. Crew chiefs lose sleep studying slow-motion footage of that right-side lean that transfers every ounce of weight exactly where the tires need it, and by 1989 the entire class is forced into the 7-second zone not because they got faster, but because Bob Glidden dragged them there kicking and screaming behind a 10-year-old grocery getter that refused to obey physics, gravity, or mercy. The day competitors walked out in protest. September 2, 1988, 4:11 p.m., U.S. Nationals, Indianapolis, semifinals. Bob Glidden has already won 41 of his last 48 rounds, the Aero Fairmont is on a 19-round win streak, and the entire pro stock field knows the championship is decided before the final even runs. When Glidden trees Bruce Allen in the semi with another perfect .419 light and 7.43, 8 top drivers, Warren Johnson, Lee Shepard, Joe Lepone Jr., Frank Iaconio, and 4 others, do something never seen before or since. Load their cars on trailers in the middle of the biggest race of the year, refuse to run the final rounds, and march to the timing tower demanding NHRA park the Fairmont for the good of the sport, while 82,000 fans boo so loud the grandstands shake. Television cameras catch Warren Johnson yelling, "We're not racing, we're being executed," as grown men with million-dollar programs stand on the return road crying because they've spent their life savings and still can't beat a quiet man in a baby blue family car. NHRA officials threaten disqualification, sponsors threaten to pull funding, and Bob Glidden simply tows the Fairmont back to the pit with Judy, eats a sandwich, and says nothing while the sport he loves almost tears itself apart over one car that refused to lose. Why the Fairmont is still banned from nostalgia events. 2025, every major nostalgia pro stock series quietly includes one line in the rulebook: no 1978-80 Fairmont bodies allowed. Organizers admit off record, if we let a Glidden-style Fairmont in, one car would win everything and kill the show, just like 1988. The baby blue ghost still haunts promoters 37 years later. They'd rather ban the shape than risk another decade of one man embarrassing everyone. The ugliest car in history remains the only silhouette officially blacklisted, not because it broke rules, but because it broke spirits. Bob Glidden and his hated baby blue 1978 Fairmont didn't just win 85 nationals and 10 championships. They proved one quiet man with a Cleveland motor and an ugly grocery getter could break the entire pro stock world. NHRA changed rules 4 times, competitors cried, walked out, and even today nostalgia series still ban the Fairmont shape. That's not a car. That's a nightmare on 4 wheels. Drop if Glidden is the GOAT. Comment your favorite pro stock memory. Smash like and subscribe. Regal Rides brings you more legends they tried to bury. See you at the track.